Hi, we will now show you the setup we have for showing you how BeoLink Gateway is set up. So this is our lab. We have all the different systems we work with for developing integration with all of them. So we have AK Schneider, Blue Drone, many BeoLink Gateway prototypes here working, and all the IT stuff. And what we will use will be a couple of iPads for showing you the web panel, the configuration user interface, and the BeoLink app, the updated BeoLink app. Then we have my laptop here, which I will use for showing you the configuration user interface. And we will use Lutron Radio 2, which we have inside this cabinet, where we have a dimmer working, and this is a demo shade, and we have a thermostat, two set point thermostat. So we will show that. And on the BNO side, we have one network link product, which is the BeoPlay V1, which uses the new Ethernet-based network, which is called network link. And then we have BeoSound 4 as an audio product, which is Masterlink, with BeoSound 5 for getting music from there and showing you music in the BeoLink app. So we can do cover browsing and things from the BeoLink app, getting music from BeoSound 5. So the first thing is getting the address of our BeoLink Gateway. In our case, this is our BeoLink Gateway, which is, here's the Masterlink cable, Ethernet, and power. That's what we need. And we need to find it from our computer. So we can go into, for example, I have a Bonjour browser, if you want to use multicast DNS service discovery. And you can check here, there's a training BeoLink Gateway, which is at address 192.168.42.226. So you just can discover it just like that using Bonjour browser, or if you are going to Safari, it already has a discovery option in the menu. You can, of course, you can use this setup UI configuration user interface from whatever you want. Simply remember, don't use Internet Explorer. That's a tip I gave you. But any other normal browser should work. I'm using Chrome, so I connect to 192.168.226, and it gives me the usual option of setup user interface or web panel. Web panel is for the end user, setup user interface is for us. And as usual, we get many tabs on top, which is project information. Or project information, you have a name for the project, which is, in this case is BeoLink Gateway. This is demo project. A display name, which is what we'll show on the discovery here. It's called Training BeoLink Gateway. This is the name that we put here, and it's the name that the user will see on BeoLink app and on the web panel. And then information about you, about the installer. This is John, and contact. You give it a telephone number or email address so that the customer can call you in any emergency. Or you always have down here, you have the version number of BeoLink Gateway software. You get help here on top, which is, I know you won't use it, but please remember that it's there if you need anything. So it's context sensitive. If I press help now, I will get help for project, for this same screen. I always can go through to a table of contents and I get access to all the help. features. We'll go back to project. The next tab is setup, so it's system, network configuration, time and date, integration protocol. So this is quite standard. The host name, which is how you can contact BeoLink Gateway on the network. So if I type something else, like demo gateway, now I have to go to demogateway.local in my home network to access BeoLink Gateway if I want to access it by name instead of by IP address. Okay, but let's do it like BeoLink Gateway. Note that if I put something illegal, immediately the field I'm typing in goes red and gives me an error message. So if I leave that blank, so I have to type something. BeoLink Gateway. Then DHCP enabled, so we will get address from DHCP, or you can type all those in manually. This is standard network setup stuff like IP address, subnet mask, DNS server, and the gateway. So this is standard stuff, and it's network configuration, so you need to apply that. Otherwise, if you change network configuration on the fly, you will lose your setup. You have to reconnect again. So if I change anything, I have to apply it. This is one of the only places where I have to apply what I type. In the rest of the settings, it's just type and it's already running. Date and time. Normally you can leave it like synchronized from internet, and you will get the time and date from the internet. You simply have to select the time zone. So you have a big list of places here. Just select your time zone, and you get the time and date constantly from the internet. That's the recommended setup. If you prefer to put it manually, you can always uncheck this and set it up manually. I don't prefer, so I'll leave it automatic. Then there's a nice feature which is an astronomical clock. You can say call certain macro when the sun sets, and that changes every day. In winter it sets earlier, in summer the sunset is later in the evening, and for knowing that time you need to provide BeoLink Gateway with the position, with the location. So you have to search in Wikipedia, Google, or somewhere else, or your GPS, where you are, and you have to type your latitude and longitude in there. Like here we are at latitude minus 35 approximately degrees, and longitude minus 56. So this is about where we are now. Okay? So now BeoLink Gateway can figure out for every day of the year which is the time that the sun rises and the sun sets. So you can say 1 hour before the sun sets, turn on the lights in the garden. And then we have some integration protocol tab here, which is the protocol that BeoLink app and other controllers like AMX, Restaurant, Control 4 can use to interact with BeoLink Gateway. So you can do it over RS-232 or over Ethernet. In any case, you have to give, for Ethernet you have to give a TCP port, and for RS-232 you have to give a bit rate and which RS-232 adapter you're using. One comment on this is that you don't have an RS-232 port on BeoLink Gateway, you have only USB ports. So you can use USB to RS-232 adapter to connect to your controller via RS-232. The same applies for drivers. If you have an old Lutron Homeworks that only has an RS-232 connection, you can add another USB to RS-232 interface to connect to your home automation products. The recommended RS-232 that comes flying now is this one, which is the same one recommended by Bang&Olufsen for setting up all other products. So for all technicians working with Bang&Olufsen already have one of those. This has been tested on BeoLink Gateway and works. You can use other ones, no problem. We cannot guarantee that they work okay. This one works and you already have it. So what's the nice thing about this? You can add as many of these as you want to BeoLink Gateway. So if you need 6 RS-232 ports, just go and plug them in. You may need a USB hub to have more connections. Because here we have like a couple of them. So if you need more of them, you can always add a USB hub and add, I don't know, 10 RS-232 ports, no problem. So, and then you will see them here. Here we have no adapters connected. If I add this, probably I will see this run. So this has blinked already. So here I go to the same drop down and here port 2 appeared. Magic! So I can add as many RS-232 ports that I want, and I can identify them here. It's port 1, port 2, the 2 USB ports, and if I add a hub, it's like port 2 point something, depending on which mouth, which connector on the hub I use. So you can readily identify those, and then just plug and play. So I take it away, chook, and it will disappear. So it worked. So this is set up. So this is basically what you need to get Master BeoLink Gateway running. So now it's programming, setting up. So the next tab is zones. Note that we have a 2-level hierarchy for zones. We have areas and zones. Areas is like top floor, first floor, second floor, or guest house, main house, or whatever you want. If you have a small installation, you only have one area. If you have a big installation, you probably want to put zones in different areas so that you don't have to name them specifically. So we have guest house, bathroom, and then you have main house, bathroom, and you don't have to put different names for those. So you separate them in areas. And that is also useful for generic programming. You can say like, turn everything in the guest house off with one single macro. So you go to zones, you always have a predefined zone that's called global. Global has a special meaning, you know, from BeoLink app, for example, everything that you put into global, macros, resources, are shown like in every zone in the house. So the global zone is on by default, but it has a special meaning. So you can always add new areas and new zones. So let's add a new area, which is guest house, and another new area which is called main house. And then in each of them I can add more zones. So living room, in the living room, in the main house, and I can add an icon so that in the web panel and the BeoLink app you have a nice icon that represents that zone, so you can visually get it. So it's living room, and it's already there in the main house. I can add another one which is called our bedroom, and I add an icon, so I have now 2 rooms in the main house, and let's add a kitchen in the guest house. And a kitchen in the main house. So we can differentiate one of the 2 kitchens. Okay? So now we have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zones in 2 areas. One nice thing is that as you type, things are already running, so you don't have to apply changes or anything. You can always go to configuration and and save a revision. So I'm happy with this. So I'm explicitly going to save a revision. So I can add a description if I want. Say zone setup. So I can always go back to that if I make a mess of my configuration. So I can go here and say revision history. This is what we've been working lately, but here at the bottom you can see zone setup, which is +1, and I can always revert to that. I can always, if I want, I can save the configuration to my laptop, my PC as a file, or bring a new configuration and load it there with save revision, load revision, and download to file. Okay. So we have set up all zones. Now we go to systems. Systems are the things that I have connected to BeoLink Gateway. In this case, we have Lutron Radar 2 and some B&O products, which is a BeoPlay V1, BeoSound 4. So let's start with that. So let's say that I have in the global zone, because it's a controller, I have my Radar 2 system. So I will add it here. In the global zone, new system, I have a drop down, and I can go to Radar 2, which is here, add system. And of course I have the huge window here asking me for how to connect to that. I give it a name. The default name is very long, so I put Radar2 in the global zone. Connection type, Ethernet. Login and password by default is the default login and password for Lutron, which is Lutron for login, and integration for the password. The IP address, you need to know that. In our case, is the one here. It's 0.27, and the port is the default 23, which is the telnet port. So I apply this, and note that here at the bottom of the screen I have two green icons. One is called BeoLink, and another one is called Radar2. They're both green, which means that both BeoLink and Radar 2 are connected, so my configuration is okay. If I mistype the port number, for example, port number 26, I get a red icon saying that it cannot connect to Radar 2 as I just mistyped something. So I go back to port 23, apply, and it should immediately connect. And now it's green. Great. It seems to work. So if we go back to our list of systems here, now I have Radar 2, BeoLink, and virtual resources. BeoLink and virtual resources are always there, so you don't have to add them. If you want, you can change name. I won't change name, but they are already there, so the new system is Radar 2. Okay, so in the next chapter we will see how to stack resources on all of the systems, which is all the buttons, dimmers, shades we have on Radar 2, and all the B&O products we have in the network. Now that we have set up our zones and our systems, which is Radar 2 and BeoLink, which is already set up by default, we are going to define resources. Resources are whatever we want to identify and use in BeoLink Gateway for commands, for events, and for showing the user in the web panel. So we'll start with Radar 2 and see how this thing works. So we'll go to the next tab, which is Resources. And I go to Radar 2, and it will show me a type of table which has zone, name, type, and address. One thing about BeoLink Gateway with respect to the older Masterlink Gateway is that all resources try to have a homogeneous setup. So all resources in the system, no matter what they are, have a zone, a name, a type, and an address. Okay? So now it's like everything looks the same. So I don't want to type things, so I press capture. And this opens a new window, and I have some instructions in case that vary depending on the system, because some systems have some peculiarities with respect to capture. And I go and do something on my system. Like, for example, I take the remote control and say, open the shade. So the shade opens, and immediately in the capture screen, I have all the things that BeoLink Gateway has seen on the system, and it gives me several options, because I know it's a shade, but BeoLink Gateway doesn't know it's a shade, so it says, oh, this can be a thermostat, a shade, or a dimmer, for example. No? So here I see state update on an unknown dimmer or shade, so add as a dimmer or add as a shade. I know it's a shade, so I just click here. I have to select a zone, so this is that room. Add as a shade, and now if you see up here, it already added a line to my table with everything: the zone, a name for the shade, the type, and an address. So it's just go type something, do something on the system, and try to find it in the capture events. So I want to change my name, which is it's a Sequoia shade, so I type Sequoia. Okay. What else do I have? I also have a button here. So see that I have a press and a release and a button. So add as a button. I will have my button, which I call it remote control, shade remote control. And then what else do I have? Nothing for the moment. I can choose to clear this, so all the old stuff goes away, and I like on my dimmer, for example. I turn it off. And I have new things on my screen, which is a state update on a dimmer. Yes, it's a dimmer, so add as a dimmer. And I have an LED, which is the LED of the keyboard, the keypad there, which I don't want, so I just ignore it. So now I have the Sequoia shade, this remote, and a new dimmer, which I'll put is my, but I put it chandelier, just to give it some importance. But it's a light bulb. Okay, so now I have 3 resources for my radar 2 system. Let's see if we can find, let's clear all that, if we can find the thermostat. I go and press echo mode or something, fiddle around with the thermostat, and go to the capture screen, and I have a thermostat here, add as thermostat. I put a fancy name, thermostat. Okay, so now I have thermostat, dimmer, a button here, which was the open shade. I need to add the closed shade also. So I type this, closed. New button is shade closed. And this one is shade open. So I have 2 buttons, 1 shade, 1 thermostat, 1 dimmer. So I think that's enough for playing around with Lutron. Now we're going to do the setup of BeoLink. So this is already here. I go and press BeoLink. See that I have new instructions here, which apply to BeoLink products. Normally, in BeoLink, we have 2 types of networks. It's Network Link, which is the new products, and Master Link, which is the legacy integration network for audio-video products from bang&olufsen. Network Link, we have the BeoPlay V1 TV. Normally, it's automatically discovered. When you go to the screen, normally you will see the TV already there. what do you need? You need the TV to be on at least sometime. So here we don't see anything, we just go and press on here. So we press TV here. So now I will get my Beo Remote 1 and turn the TV on so that BeoLink Gateway and the TV see each other turned on at least one time. From then on, BeoLink Gateway will remember that the TV was on the network. So you can turn it off. So you can turn it on here, or you can check that on our screen a network link product appeared, which is our TV. It's the only one we have. So I just click on that, and it will be added. Oh, I need a zone here, so it's the bedroom, and add it here. So that's my BeoPlay V1 already added. Now I can turn it off. It's already added, no more need to have it on. Now I go to the BeoLink products. So for the BeoLink products, I simply have to ask someone to press a source on the BeoZone 4. So Alberto will press Amen, for example, and you see immediately we have added master link product on the list of captured devices. So this one is not in the bedroom, this one is in the guest house, in the kitchen. And now I have my two BeoLink products added to the as resources. So I have all my resources set up. I have dimmer, shade, remote control, and thermostat from Radar, and I have my TV and my audio system from BeoLink. So now that we have set up systems, resources, now we're going to program something on BeoLink Gateway, so we can do something. So those are called macros, the actions that we do on BeoLink Gateway, and let's do a couple of those. One is a very simple macro that when I do something, something else happens. In our case, I want some music when I raise the shades, so I make a macro that when I press the raise shade button here in my remote, which I already defined as a resource, I will tell my BeoZone 4 to start playing CD. That's a very simple macro. The next macro will be a bit more elaborate, and we will do control of the shade from our B&O remote control. So let's start with the very first macro, which is I want some music when I just press that button and raise the shades. So next step is going to the macros tab. I want that to work in bedroom. So I press the plus button and I get a new macro. And I will say, I will add a name for that macro, which is shade up, an arrow, music, CD. So it's a name that then I can look around and find it and know what it's doing. So you have to add events and commands. So let's add an event. See that you have here three types of events: system events, resource events, or generic events. Generic events we are going to use for our next macro, which uses generic programming. But for this first macro, we use resource events. The other option, system, has to do with BeoLink Gateway generated events, like if I press the setup button or the configuration start to stop. So let's go to resource. And remember we have the shade open button, which is this one. So if there is a press on that button, I'm going to fire this macro. So I see here that we have a description of that event. It says main house, bedroom, button, shade open, press. That's the description for the event. And then I will add a command. Note that we have also a capture button. I could have done that same thing. Let's try it. I remove that, and I say capture. Press my button here, and see that in the captured events, I already have this button pressed. I can add, and I have the same effect. So you can do it both ways. You can do it explicitly by browsing all the resources you have and selecting the event you want, or you can just go press a button or something and bring it from the list. It's the same, it's equivalent. Now let's go to events. Let's close this window, to commands. What do we want to do here? We want to play CD on the BeoSound4. So add command. Again, we have several options here. And we want our BeoVision, not the BeoVision, we have it in another zone, so we kitchen, I think it was. The BeoSound4. And I have the option for a BeoFor command or an extended BeoFor command. I use a simple BeoFor command, and I choose CD from here. So, when I press this button, CD will play on the BeoSound4. We can test this we can test this already 2 ways. We can test the command by saying fire, and we just execute all the commands. We're going to try that, fire. And our BeoSound4 starts playing CD. And put it off from my BeoPhone. CD off. So I can fire the macro directly from here when I'm setting up the system. Don't need to wait, for example, when the sun sets, 1 hour after the sun sets, do something. I don't have to wait for the sun to set. I just press fire and see what happens. Or I can just test with my buttons to see if it's working. I'll just press this button, and I have the CD running again. Okay? So we put that off. So now I have my simple macro. When something happens, do some other thing. Note that we have some tools here. For example, monitoring. It will tell me everything that happens. So if I do this again, I have a screen full of events, commands, macros being executed. Okay. So you can always go there to see what's happening if you have a problem. Let's go back to macros and add the next macro. The next macro we will use generic programming. Generic means it doesn't apply to a specific resource, a specific event, and a specific command. You have like wildcards. Say, do something on the same zone where the event happened, for example. So let's do it the other way around. Let's go from our BeoFor, from our BNO remote. Let's do some actions on, for example, the shade. I want to control the shade, not from here, but from my BNO remote. For that, you have to remember, when setting up the system, to set up your TVs to allow light and control routing to BeoLink Gateway. That you have to do, otherwise it won't work. That routing means when that TV receives light or control commands from the remote, route those light and control events to BeoLink Gateway. So you have to set up that. So once that is working, and you can always test that with monitoring, try that now. Tools, monitor. So for example, let's clear the screen. You can clear it with pressing escape. So no monitoring. And I can press light, 5 for example. And here you have the light button pressed and released, the 5 button pressed and released, and then whatever happens in the system. You can always filter. The monitoring screen can become crowded with events happening around the house, so you can filter that. So if I put BeoVision I only see the lines that correspond to BeoVision, and I ignore, doesn't show the rest of the things going around the house. Okay? So let's back to the macros. Our next macro will be a bit more interesting, and what we want to do is, from our B&O remote, control all the shades in our home. In this case we have only one, but we'll show you how to do it so that with a couple of macros you control all your home, all your shades at the same time. So for controlling the shade you normally have 3 commands, which are raise, stop, and lower. So we have to get those 3 actions going. And on the BO4 we will use light, step up, light, step down to control the shades. So for step up we have 2 actions, when we press and when we release the button, and same for step down, press, release. So what we want to do is, when light and we press step up, we send a raise command to the shades. When we release either step up or step down buttons, we want to stop the shade, and when we press the step down button, we want to lower the shade. So let's do that, and then in the meantime we'll see how to extend that to all the home, which is called generic programming. So we'll start by adding a new macro. Since it will apply to all the home, we will add it into the zone called global. So in global, I add a new macro, which is, we will need 3 macros, one for raise, another for stop, another for lower. So we'll do all that. So this is raise, shades, let's call it. And the event for this is pressing on step up. So I capture an event from BO4, which is light, step up, and I have it here. It's press on step up. So I add that. See that we have a star here. That star means that it's a generic, that's already set up as generic event. So we will edit that, and instead of restricting that to my bedroom and my house, we will say in any area, in any zone. So wherever I press light, step up, this macro will be fired. So I apply this. So check that now. We have an asterisk instead of area and zone. So wherever I press step up, light, step up, press on any product, let's do it more generic, even more generic. Let's say any AV renderer, so any B&O product, doesn't have to be a TV. So it's any product, so I apply, so this is even more generic. So on any B&O product, when I press step up, what do I want to do? I add a command, which is, I have to press on generic. So in the area that fired, zone that fired, this means that if I do this action in the kitchen, then it applies only to the kitchen. If I do this action in the bedroom, it applies only to the bedroom. And I will say any shade, so any shade in the same place where I press step up, raise. So let's try that. Light, step up, and it raises the shade. Okay, I will lower it again. So now I have to do same thing for lowering. So add a new macro, add event, light, step down, capture, light, step down, and I have the press, step down here. I highlighted so you see it. So I add that, make it generic, so I edit any area, any zone, and any AV renderer, any audio video product. So now it's completely generic, and the command is similar. same area, same zone, all the shades in that zone, lower. So now I can lower the shades. Now I'm missing stop. So when I release the button, I have to stop the shade. Let's add that. So here, new macro. This is stop shades. So we will capture events. Light step up, light step down, and we want two events to capture, which is release of the step up and release of the step down. So I highlight here, key release, here it is, key release on step up, I add that, and key release on step down, here it is, I add that. So I have two events, which I must make generic for the whole house. So it's any area, any zone, any AV render. The same applies for the other one. Any area, any zone, any AV render. Note that it says any AV render and a 2 in brackets. This 2 means that there are 2 AV renders defined in my installation, which now is the BeoSound and the BeoVision. So any AV render. So now I have my two events here, which is wherever in the house I release the step up or I release the step down, I want to area.fired, zone.fired, whatever shades there are in that zone, stop. Okay, so now I have, whenever I release step up or I release step down, it will stop all the shades in that same room. And that will apply to all rooms in the house. So let's try that. So as light, I press, and now I release. I press down, now I release. So now I have full control of all the shades in whatever room I am in the house from the B&O remote control. So this is quite handy. It took us only 3 macros to have all the shades in the house controlled forever. And if tomorrow I add more shades, they're already controlled by the same buttons. No, I don't have to worry about that. Great. What about the web panel of BeoLink apps? There's a new tab here which is called Interfaces, and it has many things. It has an area for users, when I can add more users for the house. For example, the house owners have a user and have access to all areas. Let's make one here. Owner can add an here user management access, means that this user, the user called owner, can add or remove or edit more users, for example for the kids or for guests. And he can control the whole thing, and we can add a password here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, but do not tell anyone, change password. And has access to all zones. For example, he can add, or we can add users for the kids that only have access to certain areas and cannot, for example, control the main bedroom or the garage door. Okay, so we can add users there. We can set up which sources are available for all the B&O products in the house. You're maybe not interested in the sources, having control of all the sources from your BeoLink app or from your web panel. So here you can restrict which sources do you want. For example, for the BeoVision, there's a handy button here, synchronize sources with product. It will directly communicate with the product and get all the sources which are defined. That works for network link, the new network link products. For master link products, you need to add them one by one by hand. So for example, here you have TV, media, PC, okay, which have been directly queried to the TV when you press the synchronize button. And then you can add, for the TV, you can add your favorite channels with the icon. This is here at the bottom where it says favorite lists. One nice thing you can add is cameras. You have access to IP cameras on both the BeoLink app and the web panel. So let's add one. This camera is called My Cam, so we have a very original name. And we add it to the kitchen. We need a URL. I have a URL here that I got from camera. I paste it there, no username, no password. And I need to add URLs for accessing many things in the camera. Normally you need image download and video download, high resolution and low resolution is this 4 here and here. Those you need always. Then if the camera supports pan, tilt and zoom, then you add those at the bottom. Okay? If you have many cameras of the same brand, you will have to fill in all those for each camera. This is quite cumbersome to do. So there's a funny button here that's called Raw Edit, and it has a text representation of all those fields. So you can select everything, go somewhere else, copy from another camera, and paste it here. You exit this way, and now you have all the form filled in. This is quite handy. If you have many cameras, just grab that piece of text, copy, paste into all the cameras, and it should work, because they are all the same brand. So let's see what happens. If I go to the BeoLink app, or we can check with the web panel. So if I go to the web panel, I go to kitchen, and I have my camera running there. Great. From any web browser, I can access all the cameras, and I have my bedroom here with the chandelier, which is the dimmer, the shade, which I can control directly from here, or the thermostat. Okay. So this is quite easy to set up. You don't need to be a graphic designer, or you don't have to specifically place buttons and things in an interface. It's according to what you have defined in the system. The user interface is generated automatically. So let's go back to that setup. Then you can configure specific things for each zone. For example, I want the thermostat to be on top, the first thing. So I just drag and drop, and now the thermostat is on top. Okay, that is quite handy. Or I don't want the shade open button there, so I just hide it and it should disappear. So let's check. It's no longer there. So that is for zones, and then you have favorite lists where you can set up your channel options for radio channels and video channels. So for example, my tabs, and then here you can say let's try to pick up some items here. I want MTV, for example. Here, MTV hits, and it's channel 45, so it already has MTV with the logo, name, and I have only to type in channel 45, add, and here I can add all my favorite channels, and I can have many favorite lists, so different users in the house can access their own favorites. So you can do that there. And that immediately gets reflected in BeoLink app, so you can control your TV from BeoLink app immediately. Okay, so that's interfaces. And then you have in the Tools tab, which is the last one, we've been already gone through here, Monitor. So if I press things, I can see everything that's happening in the system. So if something doesn't work as I expected, I can go there and I can filter, like BeoVision, and all the lines that have BeoVision there, I can just have a glance at them and filter out all the other things. There's the log. The log is everything that happens inside the BeoLink Gateway, and it's quite full of things because many things are happening. And you can also filter there. I don't know, error, you can look for error. And there are a couple of errors there. Service report allows you to file a service report to bang&olufsen in case you believe something is wrong with the BeoLink Gateway. And then the usual firmware upgrade, where you can do online firmware upgrade if there is a new version of BeoLink Gateway software.